by the historic Huguenot Street, as well as a tutor at the New Paltz Youth Center. He'll be continuing his education at the University at Albany in the Africana Studies Master's Program, yay, where he anticipates continuing a career in higher education using the information he was taught by his professors, Dr. Cruz Bueno and Professor Edward Lawson. Terrance would like to express his gratitude to his friends and family who have motivated, encouraged, and supported him. He would also like to thank Dr. Cruz Bueno and Professor Edward Lawson, his primary and secondary thesis advisors, for their help and encouragement, as well as thanking me, and he's thanking Alicia in the honors program. So the thesis title, I think it's what I have, Cindy, I have here, sometimes they change. Black Mental Health Matters, an Afrocentric Analysis of the Modern Epidemic of Black Students' Well-Being at Predominantly White Institutions, and the two faculty members that he's thanked and credited are his advisors. Terrance.
Thank you. I don't need to restate what the title is, because we just did that.
Okay, yes, I did just do that. I did just introduce the title.
Okay.
Good catch.
Quick introduction. A question that needs to be asked is, why did you decide to research this specific topic? And the journey to this topic, it wasn't easy, because I forgot how many times I changed it, because I knew I wanted to talk about mental health, but there was just so much to talk about, and I was getting lost in wanting to talk about Black women, Black men, the Black family, how slavery affects mental health, and I really needed to focus. I really need to focus on something. My mind was jumping all over the place, and something that one of my advisors told me was, why not just focus on students, considering I'm in college. And it was Dr. B, and initially I was like, it wasn't interesting to me because I'm about to leave college, I don't want to be talking about it. But I did some research on it, and I found a lot of good information, and I also found a lot of missing information. So that's one of the reasons that led me to talking about this topic. And while doing that, while doing that research, I stumbled across a story that I've heard before, but I kind of like buried it in my subconscious, because as a Black person, you hear so many stories about discrimination and stuff that it kind of gets lost. But the one in particular I'm talking about involves these two students. On the left, we have Jazzy Rowe. On the right, we have Brianna Brochu. And these were two students, or they were students at the University of Hartford, and they were actually roommates. And the story's kind of twisted, because while they were roommates, Brochu secretly poisoned and contaminated Rose's food, her beauty supplies, and stuff like that. And it became a big story, but we didn't actually hear about it till Rose went on social media and started talking about it. And though it's kind of disturbing, what I found more disturbing was the actions of the administration and the criminal justice system, because we wouldn't know about this unless Rose went to social media, and that's when we first heard about it. And then that's when old tweets from Brochu resurfaced talking about how she finally got rid of her roommate and referred to her as Jamaican Barbie or something like that. And that was a story that I was reading, and it really got me thinking about how to do this research. That's when I really started to formulate questions. And what also got me to start thinking about questions was this quote by Rose in an interview she did. This was following the sentencing of Brochu, and I think she was sentenced like a year of probation, but she was entered into a program that she like completed that, and I forgot how many hours of community service, but her record would be clean, basically. So it says almost if the situation didn't even happen. But a quote that she said was, I had to have a lot of testing done. I'd go to the doctor's appointments a lot. I was missing a lot of school. I was hospitalized. I had CT scans to track bacteria. The bacteria affected my nasal and sinus passages to the point my face swells badly. I was on a really strong antibiotic to get rid of it, and it also has a lot of side effects. I have to be treated with the strength of antibiotic from now on for the slightest sickness I may feel. I'm able to take on a job now, I have to take medication, I lost a lot of weight, and we're working on getting it back. This has affected my mental health to the point I'm not sleeping at night. I see a psychologist once a week and take long-term meds for that too. That quote really got to me because that's when I really started to think about students at New Paltz. That's when I started to kind of formulate questions that I was going to ask them to see how discrimination affects their mental health. And that's my thesis statement. This is sort of my solution to the problem that I see. And my research was mostly about kind of exposing the problem and getting information about the problem. This is just my take on it, but it's Black mental health professionals and in general the Black community as a whole. And by the way, don't mind this thesis title I'm still working on, it's kind of long. But Black mental health professionals and in general the Black community as a whole show the weight of the Black mental health epidemic because Black students need to seek proper help from Black mental health professionals who understand all facets of the Black experience and the stressors that Black students face daily and that non-Black students don't have the burden of. And I just realized that's a lot longer than I thought because I'm losing my breath. But yeah, so in creating that thesis, for my literature review, I focused, well, I have a lot of articles, but I'm just gonna put 3 in here for time reasons. But one of my favorite articles that I read was The Educational System and Black Mental Health by Professor William B. Harvey. And this really examined like the history of mental health, and it was a critique of the educational system. I mean, one of the quotes he said is, in America, racism is an entrenched part of the normative culture, and as a consequence, it is transmitted and perpetuated through various social institutions, including schools. And that's when I was thinking of mental health and educational system in the broader sense, because I was, at the same time, I was reading a bunch of stories about students that were getting suspended in school at a disproportionate rate, students that were getting in trouble for not staying up for the pledge, and how that has like it conflicts with basically the history of them. So I found that very interesting, and I don't know, and it just made me think back to like how Black people are as creatives and stuff, and how in school you have to be quiet, walk in straight lines, adhere to like these certain rules and stuff. And I was thinking, how does that affect their mental health, having to be like confined to something that's not natural? And another one was Why Are the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Daniel Tatum. Now, I don't like this book, but for it had a lot of good information in it though, and I really did not like this book. But it made me think, because there was a bunch of stories in there. One particular, she was talking to one of her white students, and these are people or undergraduate students, and thinking going on to graduate school and stuff. And one of them stated of racism that's still a thing, and I was thinking, this person is maybe a few years away. Say if they're learning from a psychologist, say if they want to go into that field and they have that way of thinking that racism isn't a thing, what are they gonna do if a Black student comes to them and, I don't know, was a victim of some type of hate crime or stuff, and the psychologist says, now let's forget about that, let's look at another way of fixing this problem that you have. And I don't know, that's a very impactful story and way of looking at it. And another was Black Studies and Political Ideology as Predictors of Self-Esteem, a Call for for New Direction. This one is by various professors, Jonathan Livingston, Harry Price McAdoo, and Catherine J. Mills. And a quick side note, I found that while researching this topic, you run into a lot of the same people over and over again. And I don't know, that was kind of crazy to me because you could identify their writing. But this is one of my favorite ones because it talked about how through Black studies and learning about Black history, it creates a positive image, or a positive Black image, and it affects the self-esteem in a positive way. Mostly for younger students, but it still found the same effects in college students, and I felt that was good because imagine if you apply that to a Black psychologist and the type of impact it would have on Black students who face mental health struggles. And this was the research question I formulated after reading or reintroducing myself to the Jazzy Row situation. And the question is, how does racism and discrimination on campus at predominantly white universities socially and psychologically affect the mental well-being of Black students? And onto my methodology. Okay, for participation, the data was collected from a sample of 66 students enrolled in Black Studies courses at SUNY New Paltz. The majority of the students in the study were between the ages of 18 and 27. Of the participations, 9 were freshmen, 24% were sophomores, 39% were juniors, and 27% were seniors. When asked about participation in student groups and organizations, 43% indicated that they were involved in organizations. And for the procedure, participants in the study were sampled from undergraduate Black Studies courses to collect the data. A 23-question survey was constructed, and professors were contacted which classes were available and what time to take the questionnaire. After permission to solicit data was secured, students were given the questionnaire during class period. Students were told the purpose of the study, the information is confidential, and their participation is voluntary. And once the students completed the questionnaire, I placed them in a sealed envelope, basically. So only I've seen them. And onto the results of the questionnaire. The first question was basically, have you had negative experiences on campus due to discrimination? And this is a breakdown by race and ethnicity. And for Black and African American students, they answered 75% that they have experienced or have had encounters with discrimination on campus, versus 50% for Hispanic and Latino, 36% for white, and 50% for Asian. And that wasn't too big of a shock for me because that's how I felt, but I didn't really have the information out there to make a claim like that. And this is specific to Black students, and it just asks how many encounters they've had. And it was either 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, more than 10, or 0. And 50% said they've experienced encounters with discrimination 1 to 3 times. 25% said 3 to 5 times. 8% said 5 to 10 times. 4% said more than 10 times, and 13% said they haven't experienced any at all. So yeah, the range from 1 to 5 was the most prominent. And the key question though was, out of those experiences with discrimination that they had, do they feel that it affected their mental well-being? And 79% of Black or African American students said yes. 36% for Hispanic and Latino, 32% for white, 50% for Asian. So this confirmed that I was onto something in my study. So it basically gives me reason to look into some more stuff though, because I'm still writing the paper. That's the truth. I'm still writing the paper.
That's the whole we all do as academics. We're always writing the paper.
The question, do you think the university provides adequate mental health services for students of color? This is something that could be researched more in the future because like a large chunk of my paper, like it has to do with so much other stuff that I can't really continue and like write 30 more pages about this specifically. So I have to like piece it out. But the answers to this, it kind of, how do I put this? It was a hard question to answer because I'm not sure if I put it in here because there was a lot of data, but a lot of students have never visited the mental health services center. So this is of like maybe 50% of the people. So I'm not sure like how, like a way of looking at this. There has to be like another angle of trying to look at that information. And this is a bunch of stuff that, or a bunch of data that I didn't have time to turn into like cool charts and stuff. So I just listed it. And 88% of Black students have come across racist and Eurocentric material in class. And for time reasons, I'm just gonna stick to Black students. And 92% of Black students think that the administration does not hold professors and students accountable for acts of discrimination. And 75% of Black students don't know of a place to report acts of discrimination on campus. There's more information that could not turn into charts. 88% of Black students do not feel safe from discrimination on campus, and they don't feel safe from discrimination in New Paltz in general. And 67% of Black students do not feel safe from police brutality on campus, and 96% of Black students do not feel safe from police brutality in New Paltz. So there's a bit of a difference. They feel safer on campus, but not completely safe. And this was the last question that I asked them. It was, how do they feel about the recent name changes of the Hasbro complex buildings? And this one shocked me a little bit because for Black and African Americans, 71%, for Hispanic and Latino, it was 64%, and for white, it was 80%, and 15% for Asian. And I remember talking to Siani about this. I was like, 80% for white people? And Black people are like 71%? And I started to think like, how, no, I linked it to how I felt about it. And I was thinking, I don't have like an opinion either way because I don't have like a pessimistic way of looking at stuff. So I'm thinking maybe, because there was a lot of neutrals in there and a couple people who didn't have an opinion. I was thinking maybe that was their reason for it. Maybe they just like experienced so much stuff and seen so much stuff that they were kind of like, it's just a symbol. So maybe that was their way of looking at it. And as an analysis, I found that mental health among Black students at PWIs, like is a problem now. And I feel that this information now, it'll give people the basis for figuring out other solutions, how they might want to attack the problem. Because I'm just one person, I just have one way of looking at it. I just see that if someone experiences that, then they need like the adequate mental health service that benefits them. And I feel that would be from a Black person who's educated on like racism, discrimination, who's obviously educated in psychology and therapy. And yeah, that's my analysis. Off to the conclusions. What is my conclusion? I didn't think about that because I'm still writing it. But basically, I found that there's an epidemic on campus. I found that students, wait, hold on, let me back this up because I got so much information, I'm getting lost. Because I did the questionnaire, but I also I personally interviewed students, and there was a few things that really struck me about what they said. One of them, because I only interviewed 4 students, but 3 out of the 4 initially wanted to go to HBCUs first. So I was thinking, they wanted, because that's like a major shift from going to an HBCU to a predominantly white university. And I asked them, so what was your opinion of New Paltz while coming here? A lot of them said they felt validated, they were excited, and then I asked them how they felt now, and it was a different story. They felt that they would have been better off going to HBCUs because they'll be around people that look like them more, and that they wouldn't have to experience some of the stuff that they experienced here. And another thing that I found was one of healing. They felt that due to Jim Crow, slavery, mass incarceration, the war on drugs, that Black people didn't have the time to heal, and they felt that it's proper that to solve the woes we have now is we need to get the proper time to heal from a lot of past trauma. And yeah, in conclusion, there's so much stuff that Black people face every day that affects their mental health, from like the littlest of stuff like going into an art class and your teacher referring to African art as primitive, or a history class and they're saying that that African people are uncivilized, or if you go to meet your Black studies professors and you have to meet them in a trailer, like this stuff, it affects you in ways that you probably don't even know till you actually think about it. But yeah, we need to start having an honest conversation about mental health in the Black community, and mental health in the Black community in general, but specific to this mental health of Black students at PWIs. Any questions?
So first of all, congratulations. This work it's not just an academic topic, it's not just intellectual musings. This is critical for the well-being of humanity, and specifically Black people and Black humanity. And you are definitely working in the tradition of Black studies, the affirmation of Black humanity and Black liberation. And you have done a study that universities pay thousands of dollars to consultants to do. So the other piece is that not only is your work important and valuable for what it does for us on this campus, but that I want you to realize that your work is also valuable to the institution. And I hope that when you finish writing this and we have some conversations, that you share this, and that this is something that administrators and professors need to see and hear, because it's like you say, students on campus and Black students of color, feel unsafe in classrooms, in their dorms, and places where they should. So, and the other thing is, you didn't tell me you got into the master's program. Congratulations.
I forgot.
Who forgets that?
Well,
Congratulations.
Put it in his bio.
One day, I look forward to us being colleagues, to you having your PhD and us being colleagues. And I do have some questions. And the first one is, with the way you brought out race and ethnicity, and I think we talked about this a little bit, but Latino or Hispanic is not a race.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how did you do that on the survey? When somebody checked that they were Latino and Black, what category how did you work that in your data analysis?
Yeah, that was so hard. No, because I was looking at the census, and I don't remember. First, I divided by those who specifically identify as Black, white, or Latino, and then I think I put the Black and Latino with the black because
If they identified as black and they were
Yeah.
Latino, you did put them in the black category.
yeah, because the study focuses on black students and they identified as black. Yeah, but I kind of have a problem with the way the census did it because that's pretty much how I did it, but it didn't leave room to have all the identities. So I don't know, maybe that's something that we could look at further.
Yeah, and I also, can you go back to the slide where it's the discussion of the name changes? Yeah. In addition to, thinking, and I think that this is really quite fascinating, right? That there's so many other things that students experience, from staff to administrators and discrimination on campus, that for them is like. Do you think though that it could also be, and if you could, in your thoughts why, do you think that it could also be the way that it's an erasure? That if we change the names, then this is taking away the fact that these were slave owners and taking away from the fact that they founded this university, and people don't want that erased. They want that history preserved and to say, no, this is who these people were. So do you think that could be it? Why or why not? Or is it other things?
It could seem that way, but I think that's what the disagree would come in, and there was only 2 people that disagreed.
So it was mostly people neutral or who didn't.
Yeah.
The others were neutral or didn't.
I like it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent project, excellent project. I think that is valuable for a variety of different reasons, just as Dr. Cruz also said, with respect to us, this particular engagement of the experiences of people of African descent here at New Paltz is very important. And it's been done at other colleges and on other levels and different things like that. I haven't seen anything particularly done like this, at this level, at this university. And thank you very much for that. And was coincidental. I was gonna say irony, no, it's coincidental is, and I think I may have mentioned this when you came to my class and passed out the studies to my students. I was thinking about the university having to do something exactly like this just last week. Right? And I actually wanted to, because I'm a faculty member that represents the university, the department and the faculty senate. I was actually going to say something to them on Wednesday, this coming up Wednesday, that this needs to be done, right? The fact that you're doing it is like, maybe I might want to hesitate. I don't know, because what I want you to get credit for this.
And get it published.
Yeah. No, it's real. This is particularly important. Now, as it relates to trying to resolve this idea about racialized categories of Black, Hispanic, and stuff like that, once you resolve that in a problem-free way, give the rest of the world a call. Okay? So I just said that. There's always going to be problems. So you just try to put forth the best categorization that has the least amount of problems within this world of problem-free identities. Within this world of problematic identities. As it relates to Black studies, I think this is particularly important. So even in your presentation, you talked about how when you're reading some of the stuff, you see a lot of some of the same individuals, right? And that's what a discipline does, right? A discipline establishes boundaries and they work within a particular framework, right? So you're always engaging, if you're not engaging the work of other individuals that came before you, then that, in a variety of different ways, you're not creating a discipline, right? And that dialogue is always going back and forth. So then, as it relates to African American Black psychologists, so Black Studies, the first Black Studies program was at San Francisco State, 68, 69, depending upon which year you want to, like they pushed forward in 68, they got approved in 69, right? But then the American Black Psychology Association was established in San Francisco in 1968 also. Right. So you see all of this going on at the same time as it relates to Black identity and people speaking about the significance of us engaging this at the level of appropriately understanding those issues that go along with black mental health. Right. That being said, that is not the first. These are not the first individuals who has had degrees in psychology. Let's just limited to that. Right. That actually engaged this. Right. Because I think the first black psychologist was actually a woman. Late 19th century, 1895. I think her name was Patterson. Right. Black woman. Right. And then you have other individuals that actually came after her. So black people have been talking about the black experience as it relates to psychology in a variety of different contexts for over 120 years now here in America, right? And then when you get to the Brown versus Board of Education decision, Kenneth Clark, right? His Dow study, right? He's a psychologist, right? His Dow study was particularly important as it relates to that Supreme Court decision also. So I say that this particular study you're doing is very meaningful, and it will help not only the well-being of people of African descent, but also it will help other psychologists understand, try to take off some of these blinders and biases as it relates to them thinking that this way is the only way. Right? So even let's see, within the late 80s, 90s, you see this movement within academia, and that's why I like to say Black Studies is the vanguard of academia on a variety of different levels. Right? There's this movement in the institutions of higher learning within the late 80s, early 90s towards cultural psychology. Right? But black people have been talking about this since the 1960s, 1970s, 1940s. Right? But now all of a sudden it gains legitimacy when you have white people talking about the same thing. Right? So to that extent, engaging black voices and using black agency in the way that you've done here is very important, and I thank you very much for it.
Thank you.
I think I took some notes so we can have a conversation about conclusions and policy prescriptions because, right, it's Stokely Carmichael who says we have enough description, now we need prescription, right? So what are Kwame Ture, I should say. So I think that as we go through the data and you go through the data and we have a conversation, and I think also thinking about future research streams. This is full of really important data, and as you said, I want you to think about, and I think you understand the gravity of this, let me not say that, how extensive this literature is, how many directions, and you did a good job of putting the blinders on and going forward. So we can talk about future research streams as well, but I am so, just happy and excited for the work you've done and that you're going to continue to do. As Professor Dandridge said, this is cutting edge. This is at the forefront. You can take this project and work for the rest of your life.
Yep.
You will get a university job. You will be a professor, and you will have research and publications for the rest of your life.
And in the immediate future, you will be pursuing your master's degree.
And it takes a village. And I'm so thankful for you being in the honors program and you being in Black Studies and